The James Show Podcast.
Let me apologize in advance for just knocking this off the T-ball tee when I'm a grown man and I should be taking fast pitch. But my goodness, when NPR and PBS go to Congress or go to CNN or go to wherever and try and make the case that they shouldn't have their funding cut, they really don't have a good reason to continue being funded. Because the excuse that was given when they were created was like, well, we only have like 3 TV networks. And, you know, if all it takes is 3 corporations to hide a story, you know, that's 3 people make a decision and they can shut out information from all the American public. We've got to have an outlet that's not beholden to, I don't know, the private sector or whatever. So that was the crazy excuse for NPR and PBS to come into existence. Fast forward to, let's just go forward to 1995. Let's go to 30 years ago. God, 1995 was 30 years ago. What am I, 100? Remember how many channels you had back then? Now, I grew up in Bug Tussle, and I was so far remote that the cable company didn't run a cable out to our log cabin. But my friends had cable, and they had like 72 channels. So what do we need PBS for? There's no real gatekeeping issue that could be made with 72 channels. Well, let's go back to about 20 years ago. I got my first little dish satellite TV. And then you know how many channels I had? 372. So seriously, what the heck is NPR and PBS for? Let's go to right now. How many channels do you have? Between what comes out, I don't care if you've cut the cord or you've gone all streaming or Netflix or whatever. You have basically, if you just took YouTube, you have all of human information on your TV at any time on demand. You don't even have to worry about the start time. You remember like, hey, it's Friday, it's 8:00, time to watch Miami Vice. Now you can watch all 8 seasons of Miami Vice, front to back, starting whenever you want, stopping whenever you want, pausing whenever you want. The idea that we need to take money from you and give it to a TV station or take money from you and give it to a radio station or else you just don't have information available to you is absurd. So they have an impossible task out here. So even on top of that, they're making terrible arguments. NPR CEO Catherine Marr is making the rounds in the media. She was on CNN last night. And CNN, MSNBC, they're all running cover for them because they love NPR. They love PBS. And they don't want the funding to be cut. Here's what she said on CNN.
What do you say to Republicans who argue the funding is a waste of taxpayer dollars and consider your outlet to be a biased propaganda machine?
Well, I would take those two things apart. Number one, 70% of all funding goes directly to local stations. NPR receives 1% to 2% of national funding on an annual basis. We're talking $3 million, $5 million. It's not much.
Well,
I think, unfortunately, this is cutting off their constituents' noses to spite NPR's face. It doesn't help anyone to take this funding away. As far as the accusations that we're biased, I would stand up and say, please show me a story that concerns you, because we want to know and we want to bring that conversation back to our newsroom. We believe that as a public broadcaster, we do have an obligation to serve all Americans, and we need to make sure that our coverage reflects the interests and perspective, and we hear from Americans across the political spectrum. That's important to us, and we want to make sure we live up to that.
She said NPR's not biased. She said PBS isn't biased. That's great. Oh my goodness gracious. If you're trying to make the case that you're unbiased and you're just a good information source, why do you start off with a lie, a biased lie? So even in her answer, she was proving the bias. It's okay if you have a bias. I mean, she didn't even try some of the garbage that I hear a lot as a radio host. They're like, when you say the media has a liberal bias, the truth has a liberal bias. Oh, yeah, I never heard that before. Yeah, it's not bias. And that's another misdirection she did at the beginning there. Oh, really? The funding, we only get like 1% of our national funding. 70% of it goes to our member stations. Yes. Yeah. So the money doesn't go straight to your headquarters, but it goes to all your stations. That's still NPR getting the funding. And that's still you getting the funding too, because most of those NPR stations have to subscribe and pay you money for their content. So you do end up with that money. You lying sack of you know what. But the idea that it's unbiased, it's so easy to blow it out the water. So easy. John Kennedy, the senator from our neighbors over in Louisiana, was on the floor of, the Senate, giving some bias examples from PBS and NPR.
Here's another one. This came from Louisiana Public Broadcasting. Becoming Papa, father's key to gender justice. I can tell you that's every mom and dad in Louisiana. When they lie down to sleep at night and they can't, they're lying there worried about gender justice. Not. I mean, the article, the title of the article suggests what you ought to believe. That's not fair or balanced. Here's another one. Transgender athletes seek protections to play sport. Here are a couple that you saw on that you saw on television, PBS, paid for with your tax dollars. First headline: talking to young children about race and racism. Another headline: how America's history of racism connects to divisions today. Another headline from PBS: the hidden racism of young white Americans.
All right, so he goes on. He does that for about 12 minutes. He was up there for a long time. Now, if you want to say, well, you're just picking out anecdotal examples and you're cherry picking, fine. Let's do some more broad-based analysis here. This is David Bozell from the Media Research Center. They run Newsbusters, and I play a lot of their content on this show. David Bozell was giving you some stats because they sat down and they've logged what NPR and PBS have covered just in the last 3 months, and check out how bad their bias is.
Just in the last couple of months, from April to June, Media Research Center has analyzed all of their guest totals, all of their bias. Okay, this is when they're fighting for their lives. They've got $1.2 billion at stake, and they are continue to be 93% negative against the president from April to June. On their flagship political news show, Washington Week, 13 out of 14 guests were all left-wingers. Only one was a Republican, and that guy ended up trashing Trump to begin with. On the NPR's flagship shows, 36 left-wing guests, 0 Republican guests. There's a 42-to-1 disparity when they label Republicans far right versus far left. It's just left-wing propaganda from start to finish. And even at this critical moment for them, where they're with $1.2 billion at stake, they can't seem to get the memo.
Yeah, you know what's remarkable? They can't seem to tone it down.
Yeah, and they're also trying to make the case that, you know who really needs NPR? You know who really needs PBS? Rural people. I'll blow that out of the water next, coming up on the James Show. Are you a rural person? Are you a huge NPR fan, PBS fan? Because I'm from rural America, and there's not a whole lot of that's not the bread and butter of the NPR constituency. You're going to have to trust me on that one. We see a lot more of these. $9 billion is the total cuts, which is just absolutely tiny compared to the deficit. But hey, I'll take any cuts we can get, but especially to NPR and PBS. Now, you may be thinking, well, Parker, of course you don't like them. You have to compete against them, and if they got killed, you would lose a competitor. No, that's true. But even if I didn't work in radio, ideologically, philosophically speaking, it's a terrible idea. I don't agree with it. I don't think the government should have government-funded propaganda networks intermingling with the private sector people who are just trying to do the right thing and make some money. But let's get to some of the silly excuses that they're giving for this. Now, remember, they're trying to make the case that we're not biased. Let's go ahead and get past that. We're not biased. Because even if they agreed with me, even if they said everything that I agree with, I still think they deserve to be cut. Why? It's called having principles. That's what it's called. But the lies that they have to tell to keep this going are just, they're so far out of it that who believes this stuff? The NPR CEO, Catherine Maher, was on CNN yesterday, and she was saying, you know who really needs NPR? You know who's going to suffer the most if NPR gets cut? Rural people. Really?
But I think that the place where we're seeing the most traction is senators who represent communities where there are large rural communities, large tribal communities, in particular in places like Alaska, where there just isn't a lot of other options. Broadband service is not universal, and heck, even cell phone service is not universal. There's a real understanding of the need there, as well as for emergency alerting, in which public media plays an extraordinarily important role.
Yeah. That's what I think of when I hear NPR and PBS. You know who their model constituency is? Yeah, it's the people in the middle of nowhere. That's who they're serving the most. Oh, just hush. Does anybody believe that? Because the stereotypical NPR listener is exactly what you think it is. We get to see who listens to what. I get to see ratings. I've been getting to see ratings for 20 years behind the scenes, not the stuff that's available to the public, but the stuff that's broken down by age, by demographic, by race, by zip code, by the incomes of the household. And it's exactly what you think it is. NPR's bread and butter is this sort of effeminate, elite, bourgeois, white liberals who live in major urban areas. That is the NPR listener. It's just the opposite of what you said. Because what's rural America? That's red state America. Rural America does not listen to NPR. They don't like NPR. And I'm not saying you can't find someone who lives out in the sticks who likes NPR. I'm just saying, generally speaking, they do much better in major urban areas like a Dallas, even like a Fort Worth, like a Denton. Denton's huge. College towns like NPR, because that's where you get the high concentration of political lefties who never had to really experience the real world and have the leftists beat out of them. But that is just adorable, right? Oh, yeah. Rural people really need us. Yeah, that's what we need. Dude, you just failed us. You just failed rural America when it came to the floods. You just failed rural Texas when it came to the floods. Where were you on that? Here's David Bozell, MRC.
Not only have they been lobbying Congress pretty hard, they actually put out an APB on their social media feeds in Texas, the Texas Public Broadcasting System, to lobby their member of Congress while the Kerrville floods were unfolding. They did not. There's very limited evidence that they actually broke into the local programming. Wow. Kerrville Police Department confirmed to us that they were never invited on the local NPR station to talk about the floods. They went on every other private station in Kirk County, never once to the NPR local affiliate. Meanwhile, on their social media feeds, they were lobbying Congress for $1.2 billion while the floods were unfolding. It's criminal.
I hope it gets cut. I hope all of their funding gets cut, because there's so many juxtapositions in their excuses here. Number one, they're like, it's only 1% of our funding. Then why are you fighting so hard to keep it? Why do you need anything from the taxpayers if 99% of your expenses are covered by yourself? Wouldn't you want to get rid of that to just erase the idea of impropriety or influence or the fact that you're wasting taxpayer dollars? Do you really not need that? Because then you're either lying about the proportion of funding that you receive from the taxpayers, or you're lying about the popularity among the American people in both urban and rural areas. If you were so beloved by Americans, you wouldn't need the tax money. And the very fact that you're up there fighting tooth and nail to keep it tells me you're lying. And that's not a good look for a news agency now, is it? We're super concerned about what's been going on with all the violence against ICE agents, not just the bricks being thrown, but we had 2 incidents here in the last week or so in Texas. I guess it's been a couple weeks now, where there was the attack at the McAllen facility. There was the attack at the Alvarado ICE facility. 3 people shot in McAllen, 1 here in Alvarado. And then we had a Dallas ICE agent who went on to pick up someone in Oklahoma. He got shot this week. So Renata Castro from USA for All, there's an immigration firm. Welcome back to the show. And no, it's not that immigration lawyer. This is the one that you like. There's another one that comes on the show. I get a bunch of emails because me and her disagree vehemently on these subjects. But I'm glad you're here, because Renata, explain to people, immigrants, illegal immigrants, legal immigrants, what are you supposed to do? What's the proper things to say, and how do you react when you are approached by an ICE agent? What would you tell people to that?
It's certainly a very challenging situation to give advice on, and I'll explain to you why. Imagine you're walking down the street and someone with a mask just comes and approaches you unidentified. I grew up in Rio. That will scare me. That will scare the life out of me. And this is basically what's happening.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt. You said you grew up in Rio?
I did.
Like Rio de Janeiro?
Yes, the one and only.
Cool.
Cool, right?
Yeah, I didn't know you were Brazilian.
I am. And the reason why I bring this up is because the circumstances we've been seeing with ICE approaches, and I will never advocate for violence, particularly against law enforcement, but also not against migrants who a lot of times don't present an immediate threat when they're being detained. But this is just a very volatile situation, because I think that there's an overall sense from the public that they need to do justice with their own hands. In my 10 years of being a lawyer, have never seen, and I represent a large number of individuals, anyone present resistance unless they are criminals or caught in a criminal act. Usually you will see a lot of despair. You will see a lot of fear. We will see a lot of moms and dads, particularly moms who maybe have kids in school and they're concerned for the well-being of their child as they're being detained for a civil violation. But the violence is not justified on both ends. However, if you're approached by ICE, I think it's fair to request from you that you keep calm and that you tell the ICE officer, I will be more than glad to comply with your requests. I just need to make sure that you are an official, that, I'm not being kidnapped. I think that that's a fair statement. Don't create any violence. Don't resist it. Try to keep calm. And that's still a human being on the other end. I know that right now we're very polarized and, there's a lot of discussion about what's being done. Migrants are people and ICE officers are people. And I cannot imagine having a job where arresting people with children would make you go home and not be impacted by that at the same rate that, our clients are being majorly impacted by it too. So my advice will always be keep calm, ask for identification, ask for a warrant. And if they refuse to give you a warrant, do not say anything that could be used by an ICE officer or by the government against you in your immigration case.
So you asked for a warrant. What if they don't have one?
Well, if they don't have a warrant and you are in a public place, ICE actually has the authority to detain anyone without probable cause. Now, when we look at what's going on now, there have been excesses in detaining individuals that don't pose an immediate threat because the government is really trying to send a message that goes beyond the detention of that individual. It's very unusual that all these detentions are happening in broad daylight in public places and they're being filmed. So the placement of these films to me is very questionable. Not that people could not be filming because you now have, everyday reporters with their phones, but it seems to me that this is very coordinated to make sure that migrants everywhere are afraid. But the government, by giving up on the requirements, on their own internal requirements, because there have always been memorandums in regards to who would be a detention priority, they have actually put a lot of lawful residents and American citizens in danger. We've never seen so many American citizens be detained. So we have to find a happy medium between enforcing the law and violating the law that doesn't create the chaos and the fear that we're living on now.
We're talking with Renata Castro from USA for All, an immigration attorney. Now, if you know that you have the legal right to be here, you're either a legal immigrant or you're a citizen, how can you make your case to the ICE agents in a quick manner and have the interruption to your day be as little as possible?
You know what? You can beg and plead all you want, but that officer has the ability to detain you until they verify that you actually have the status that you claim to have. And the reason why I say that is because that officer is not even obligated to take your passport for face value. He has the opportunity to hold you in detention while he verifies that information. Now, it seems to me that would be a major waste of resources from the government, but we've seen this happen more and more. Once again, if an officer approaches you and you are a lawful resident or you have lawful status, try to reason with that officer. Don't get combative and offer to provide documentation that he or she knows that they can verify because they have access to one of the most comprehensive databases in the world. So even though you're offering documentation, they don't have to take that and they can actually hold you in detention. So try to reason, be calm, and present as many favorable arguments that show that officer that you're complying and that you're in the country with status. And now there's something else. A lot of people don't know that ICE agents have historically had discretion to detain or not detain individuals who are in the country without status. So this is something completely new where the federal government's making them detain everybody that they come in contact with, because in the past they had discretion. just like a police officer has the ability to give you a ticket or not, ICE officers in the past had that ability, but it was just recently stripped away from them so that they can meet detention quotas.
So if you think you've been unjustly detained or going through the deportation system, what do they do?
It depends on their mood. They can take you to an immigration detention facility while they validate.
No, not the ICE agent. What does the immigrant do or the citizen do? Call you?
Well, I hope they don't have to get to that level. Usually the first stop would be if they don't have any documentation with them that shows their status, a birth certificate, a passport, those would be, or a green card or a valid visa. They have the ability to either call a lawyer or call a family member. In this day and age, I don't know about you, but I don't memorize phone numbers. And recently I had to, fall into the habit of doing that because once you're detained, you don't have access to your cell phone. So make sure you have memorized the number of someone who you will call and who they will answer that phone call, who will have access to that documentation. Because once you submit that evidence of status, that ICE officer has the ability to release you. But God only knows that could take 6 hours, 3 hours, that could take 12 hours, that could take 48 hours. I have seen as long as a U.S. citizen be detained for 4 days, which is a really long time.
All right, that's Renata Castro. You can find her immigration firm at USA4all, the number 4all.com. Thank you very much, and I hope this makes this whole deportation effort just a little less messy for people. Today's episode of What the Heck Did Jasmine Crockett Say This Time?
Jasmine Crockett, queen of the liberal tea. Bleach blonde, bad built butch body, Governor Hot Wheels, and he is a hot ass mess, honey. Queen of the liberal tea.
She's playing fiddle on that track. I'm kidding. Does she even like Texas? I was playing earlier. No, Garrett piped up on that one real quick. Yeah, earlier this week. This isn't today's edition that I'm talking about. She called MAGA uneducated, and then she said Texas has always been discriminatory. And today we get another great insult. Or I guess this was 2 days ago. We get another insult from the representative of the district I am sitting in right now as I'm broadcasting this show. Jasmine Crockett said, we're a bunch of deadbeats because we take more out of the federal tax system than we pay in.
It seems like blue states are constantly putting red states on life support, yet we got these little red states that ain't contributing nothing, but they are definitely taking up a lot of money. It is interesting because the governor in California, I don't know if you caught this, but Governor Newsom was talking about just holding on to his dollars because California is what they call a donor state, meaning that they actually contribute more than they take from the federal government.
Go there.
And then you can go down south to states like Louisiana who are broke. And so they need California to pay in. So it is so interesting that we are so concerned about whether or not we are pushing certain ideologies.
There you go. So let's talk about this. I love this conversation because what she's saying is true. Generally speaking, the states that pay in more to the federal government than they receive from the federal government, they do actually happen to be blue states. Not all of them, but a majority of them. However, how many of states do you think that is? Just go ahead and guess. Just say it out loud. Out of the 50 states in America, how many of them pay in more than they get out of the federal government? Well, no, last year it was 13. Bad guess, Gary. How could that be none? How could it, mathematically speaking, be none? We all just break even, Garrett? I don't think you thought that one through. But look, in 2020, it was only 8 states. In 2019, it was only 11 states. So there's really just a small handful of states that actually pay in more than they get out of it. But why is that? Because California is one. New York is one. New Jersey's one. New York City. Stop it. Connecticut's one. Washington's one. Why is that? Well, look at where corporate headquarters are. Look at where the biggest offices are. Look at where the biggest ports are. Look at where, if you go up to Washington, that's where Microsoft is. That's where Amazon is. That's where Boeing is. That's where some of the biggest trillion-dollar companies are. And of course, if you're in a state with a medium-sized population like Washington and you have the giant bazillion dollars worth of taxes that are being paid in on your behalf by, let's see, Amazon, Microsoft. These are multi-trillion dollars companies just right there. Same thing with California. They have all of Silicon Valley. They've got Google. They've got the Twitter. They've got the Oracle. They've got all the giant. Isn't Netflix out there too? I forgot where Netflix is. But when you have Silicon Valley there and a few more $1 trillion companies, when you also in California have the biggest ports, they're on the receiving end of everything that comes in from China. Of course. Same thing from New York. They have New York City. Guess how many giant corporations have their headquarters there? That's where Wall Street is. Of course, they're going to pay in more. And for these places that actually receive more, well, a lot of them are around the D.C. area, so let's throw those out. The rest of them, what do you think that money's going? A lot of it's going for welfare payments. A lot of it's going for Social Security and Medicare payments. So you can't blame Florida when all the retirees move down there and they're all on Medicare and Social Security. It's really just a low-hanging fruit just meant to insult you. And it's not based on sort of any economic theory or whatnot. But even when you see something like in Iowa, how does Iowa get more out of the federal government than they pay in? They get all the corn subsidies. They get all the big ag stuff. Dude, money is thrown at Iowa hand over fist because they're the first caucus every presidential election cycle. So let this little economic myth die on the vine. It's they're trying to insult you. There's no reason to be insulted. It's just Jasmine Crockett trying to say something. Sounds smart. Insulting you in the process is just a little bit of a bonus. So that's it of that.
Jasmine Crockett, queen of the liberal tea.
Bleach blonde, bad built butch body, Governor Hot Wheels, and he is a hot ass mess, honey.
Queen of the liberal tea.
Mark Levin's next on WBAP. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.